The massive alien ship appeared without warning above Earth. One moment the sky was empty, and the next a dark shadow blocked out the sun over half the planet. The ship was enormous, easily the size of a small city, with strange glowing patterns running along its hull like veins of light. Captain Sarah Chen was having her morning coffee at the Global Defense Command when every alarm in the building started screaming. She dropped her mug and ran to the main control room where dozens of technicians stared at their screens in shock. "What am I looking at?" she asked her second-in-command, Major Rodriguez. "It just appeared, Captain. No warning, no energy signature, nothing. 1 second empty space, the next second—" That. The ship hung motionless 300 miles above Earth, its alien design unlike anything humans had ever built. It was organic-looking, like some massive sea creature made of metal and light. Strange symbols pulsed along its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then it spoke. The voice came through every radio, every television, every phone on the planet. It spoke in perfect English, though there was something wrong with the tone, like a human voice played through broken speakers. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian hegemony. Your species has been observed and judged. You have developed faster-than-light travel without permission from the Galactic Authority. This cannot be allowed." In living rooms and offices around the world, people stopped what they were doing and listened. Children playing in parks looked up at the sky. Workers in factories turned off their machines. The entire planet held its breath. "You will surrender your planet immediately. All military forces will stand down. All weapons will be destroyed. Your leaders will report to our ships for processing. You have 72 standard hours to comply." Captain Chen felt her blood turn cold. "Processing. That didn't sound good." The alien voice continued, emotionless and final. "Do not mistake this for a negotiation. We have conquered 847 star systems. Your primitive technology cannot harm us. Your resistance would be meaningless. Submit and your species will be allowed to serve the hegemony. Resist and you will be eliminated." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Within minutes, every government building on the planet erupted into chaos. Presidents and prime ministers called emergency meetings. Military leaders shouted orders into phones. Scientists pulled up every piece of data they had about the alien ship. Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien contact, stood before a room full of generals and politicians, his hands shaking as he held his tablet. "The ship's energy readings are off the charts," he said. "Whatever powers that thing, it's generating more energy than our entire global power grid. And the materials, we're detecting elements that don't exist on Earth." General Harrison, the head of Earth's combined military forces, looked grim. "What about weapons? Can we fight it?" Dr. Webb shook his head. "With what? Our most powerful weapons are nuclear missiles and plasma cannons. This ship could probably survive a direct hit from everything we have and not even notice." Captain Chen studied the readings from her own technical team. Earth's space fleet consisted of 12 fusion-powered cruisers, 30 smaller patrol ships, and a handful of orbital defense platforms. Against one alien ship the size of Manhattan, it seemed like throwing rocks at a tank. But as reports came in from around the world, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of panic and surrender, people were getting angry. In Tokyo, protesters gathered outside the government building with signs reading, "Earth will not kneel." In New York, construction workers volunteered to help modify the orbital defense platforms. In Mumbai, computer programmers worked through the night to hack alien communication frequencies. President Santos received call after call from world leaders. The message was the same everywhere. Their people didn't want to surrender. The British Prime Minister just called, her aide reported. Parliament voted unanimously to resist. The Chinese Premier says their military is already mobilizing. The Russians are asking if we need help building bigger bombs. Captain Chen received similar reports from military bases worldwide. Pilots were volunteering for suicide missions. Engineers were working to overload fusion reactors as improvised weapons. Even civilian scientists were calling to offer their help. "Captain," Major Rodriguez said, looking up from his communications panel, "we're getting reports from the asteroid mining consortium. They want to know if we can use their mass drivers as weapons." Chen raised an eyebrow. The mass drivers were huge magnetic accelerators used to launch cargo between asteroids and Earth. They weren't weapons, but they could throw large objects at incredible speeds. "Tell them we'll get back to them," she said. "What else do we have?" The space construction crews are asking if they can rig their fusion torches as makeshift missiles. The Mars colony wants to send their supply ships as attack vessels and... Rodriguez paused, looking confused. Captain, we're getting volunteer applications from retired grandmothers who want to pilot ramming attacks. Chen almost smiled despite the situation. Humanity might be outgunned, but they certainly weren't lacking in fighting spirit. As the first day passed, the alien ship remained motionless above Earth, like a sword hanging over the planet's head. But down on the surface, something remarkable was happening. Factories that built cars were retooling to build missiles. Computer companies were creating targeting systems. Even children were writing computer programs to help control drone swarms. Dr. Webb worked with a team of linguists to analyze the alien transmission. They called us primitive, he said. They think we're just another backward species that will roll over when threatened. Are we? Asked Captain Chen. Dr. Webb looked at the reports flowing in from around the world. Farmers offering their tractors as weapons platforms. Teachers volunteering to coordinate civilian evacuations. Artists designing camouflage patterns for spacecraft. I don't think they understand what they're dealing with, he said quietly. On the second day, more alien ships appeared. Smaller ones, but still massive by human standards. They took positions around Earth's moon and near the major space stations. The message was clear. Earth was surrounded. Admiral Kethvar broadcast again, his voice even more irritated than before. Your resistance is foolish. We detect military preparations on your world. This will only make your eventual defeat more painful. Surrender now, and we may allow some of your population to survive as workers. The response came not from Earth's governments, but from an unexpected source. A small radio station in rural Montana, operated by an old man named Bill who had been broadcasting to truckers for 30 years. Hey there, space bugs. Bill's gravelly voice went out on the emergency frequency. This is Earth calling. We got your message and here's our answer. Go to hell. Within hours, the transmission had been picked up and rebroadcast by every radio station on the planet. It became a rallying cry. Go to hell appeared on signs, t-shirts, and painted on the sides of buildings. Captain Chen stood in the command center as the 72-hour deadline approached. Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet was pitifully small compared to the alien armada. But every ship was crewed by volunteers who knew they probably wouldn't be coming home. Captain, her communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from President Santos. The president appeared on the main screen, standing before the United Nations Assembly. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung side by side. People of Earth and any aliens listening, she said, her voice steady and clear, we have considered your ultimatum carefully. Our answer is simple, no. We will not surrender our world. We will not submit to slavery. And if you want our planet, you will have to take it from us. The transmission ended and alarms began blaring as the alien ships started moving toward Earth. Captain Chen looked around at her crew, young faces and old from every corner of the planet, all wearing the same expression of grim determination. Well, she said, I guess we're about to find out what humans are really made of. The alien response was swift and terrifying. Admiral Kethvar's voice boomed across every communication channel on Earth, filled with cold rage. Your defiance has sealed your fate, humans. We offered you servitude. Now you will receive only death. No quarter will be given. No survivors will be spared. Your species will serve as an example to other primitives who might consider resistance. Captain Chen watched her tactical display as the alien fleet began moving. The massive command ship remained in high orbit while smaller vessels, each still larger than Earth's biggest cruiser, descended toward the inner solar system. Their formation was perfect, disciplined like a pack of wolves closing in on wounded prey. Estimated time until they reach lunar orbit? She asked. 18 hours at current speed, Lieutenant Park replied from the navigation station. They're not in any hurry. Probably want us to have time to panic. But panic wasn't what was happening across Earth. In the 18 hours since President Santos had delivered humanity's refusal to surrender, something extraordinary had occurred. The entire planet had transformed into a weapons factory. Major Rodriguez handed Chen a tablet with the latest reports. The numbers are incredible, Captain. Every major corporation has retooled for military production. Ford is building missile components. Samsung is manufacturing targeting computers. Even the toy companies are making drone parts. Chen scrolled through the endless list. Farmers had converted their equipment into mobile missile platforms. Truck drivers were volunteering to ram alien ships with cargo haulers loaded with explosives. Retired engineers were coming out of retirement to design new weapons. What about the space-based assets? Chen asked. The asteroid mining consortium has repositioned all their mass drivers. They're loaded with tungsten rods and ready to fire. The Mars construction crews have mounted fusion torches on cargo containers and turned them into improvised missiles. And the Europa Science Station? Rodriguez paused, shaking his head in amazement. They've turned their entire ice mining operation into a kinetic weapon factory. Dr. Webb appeared on the command center's main screen, broadcasting from the Emergency Science Coordination Center in Geneva. Behind him, hundreds of scientists from around the world worked frantically at computer terminals. Captain Chen, we've analyzed the alien ship designs, he said. Their technology is definitely superior, but it's also predictable. They rely heavily on energy shields and plasma weapons. Their ships are built for overwhelming firepower against conventional targets. What does that mean for us? Chen asked. It means they're not prepared for unconventional warfare. Their shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and sophisticated missiles, but simple kinetic force applied at high speeds, that might get through. As if to prove his point, the first surprise came 12 hours later when the alien vanguard entered the asteroid belt. The lead ships were massive destroyers, their hulls gleaming with the same organic curves as the command vessel. They moved in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. The asteroid seemed empty and harmless, just floating rocks in the darkness of space. The alien ships didn't even bother to scan them carefully. That was their first mistake. Captain Chen watched from Earth as the trap was sprung. Fire, she whispered, though the order had already been given hours ago. The asteroids erupted with motion. What had looked like mining equipment suddenly revealed itself as the largest artillery array ever constructed. Dozens of mass drivers originally built to launch ore shipments fired as one, but instead of carrying cargo containers, they launched tungsten rods accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed. The first alien destroyer never knew what hit it. The tungsten rod, moving at 30,000 kilometers per second, punched through its shield like it wasn't there, and turned the ship into an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. The second destroyer had time to raise full shields and begin evasive maneuvers. It didn't matter. 3 more tungsten rods struck it from different angles, the kinetic energy release equivalent to several nuclear weapons. The ship simply disintegrated. Admiral Kethvar's voice crackled across the emergency frequencies, no longer cold and controlled but sharp with shock. Impossible. How did primitives construct such weapons? From the asteroid belt, a human voice answered. It was Commander Jackson, the old mining foreman who had volunteered to stay behind and coordinate the attack. Because we're not primitives, you bug-eyed freak. We're engineers. The third destroyer tried to retreat, but it was too late. The asteroids were full of hidden weapons. Cargo haulers that had been disguised as debris suddenly powered up their engines and accelerated toward the fleeing ship. Their holds packed with antimatter charges stolen from research facilities across Earth. The alien ship's point defense systems opened fire, destroying most of the improvised missiles. But humans had learned long ago that quantity has a quality all its own. For every missile destroyed, 2 more got through. The destroyer's shields flared and failed under the constant bombardment. The final cargo hauler, piloted by a volunteer from the Jupiter freight run, slammed into the alien ship's engine section. The explosion lit up the asteroid belt like a new star. In 3 minutes, Earth's defenders had destroyed 3 alien warships using mining equipment and cargo vessels. The psychological impact was enormous. They're actually bleeding, Major Rodriguez said, staring at his tactical display in wonder. We can hurt them, but Admiral Kethvar was already adapting. The remaining alien ships spread out and began advancing more cautiously. Their scanners swept every piece of debris, every asteroid. Looking for hidden weapons, they found plenty. The asteroid belt had become a 3-dimensional minefield of improvised weapons and concealed platforms. But the aliens had learned to be careful now, and their advanced technology began to tell. Energy beams lanced out from the alien ships, vaporizing hidden weapons before they could fire. Missiles were intercepted by point defense systems. The element of surprise was gone, but humans had more than one surprise prepared. The second phase of Earth's defense activated as the alien fleet passed Jupiter. What had seemed like routine cargo traffic between the gas giant's moons suddenly revealed its true purpose. Hundreds of vessels that had been harvesting helium-3 from Jupiter's atmosphere turned toward the alien fleet. These weren't disguised weapons. They were exactly what they appeared to be. Industrial ships designed to process gas giants. But human engineers had realized something important. If you could process an entire planet's atmosphere, you could probably handle a few alien ships. The first fusion scoop vessel opened its intake manifolds and accelerated directly toward an alien cruiser. The ship's captain, a veteran of 20 years hauling gas from Jupiter to Earth, had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. For Earth, she broadcast as her ship slammed into the alien vessel. The collision alone would have been devastating, but the human ship's fusion reactors had been set to overload on impact. The explosion was visible from Mars. Admiral Kethvar's fleet found itself under attack from directions no military commander had ever had to consider. Ships that should have been harmless cargo haulers were ramming his vessels with the force of nuclear weapons. Industrial equipment was being used as artillery. Even civilian pleasure craft were attacking his fleet, their owners apparently viewing certain death as preferable to surrender. What manner of species is this? He demanded of his tactical officers. They're using their entire civilization as a weapon. His science officer, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes, looked up from his scanner readouts. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout their system. Every fusion reactor, every power plant, every energy source is being overloaded simultaneously. For what purpose? Before the science officer could answer, space itself began to distort around the alien fleet. Dr. Webb's team of theoretical physicists had been busy in the hours since Earth's defiant response. If they couldn't build better weapons than the aliens, they would build weapons the aliens had never imagined. Using modified Alcubierre drive equations, human scientists had created localized space-time distortions. They couldn't build a proper faster-than-light drive yet, but they could make gravity itself into a weapon. The first gravitational anomaly appeared directly in front of an alien battlecruiser. Space twisted and warped, creating a region where the normal laws of physics no longer applied. The alien ship, designed to handle energy weapons and kinetic impacts, had no defense against the fundamental forces of the universe being turned against it. The cruiser stretched like taffy as tidal forces tore it apart at the molecular level. Its crew never had time to scream before they were converted into a stream of subatomic particles. Gravitational weapons, Admiral Kethvar said quietly. They've weaponized space-time itself. More anomalies began appearing throughout the solar system. Human physicists, working with equipment that shouldn't have been able to produce such effects, were creating pockets of twisted space that could destroy anything caught within them. But the most shocking moment came when Earth's hastily constructed defense fleet finally engaged the aliens directly. Captain Chen led the charge in the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Built in just 72 hours using a combination of human engineering and salvaged alien materials, from the Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in growing horror. In less than 6 hours of combat, he had lost 30% of his fleet to what should have been a primitive, helpless species. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. Status report, he demanded from his bridge crew. His tactical officer, a reptilian being with scales that changed color based on stress levels, was currently a deep purple of alarm. Admiral, we've lost 3 more cruisers in the last hour. The humans are using tactics we've never encountered. They're not following any recognizable military doctrine. Explain. They're treating their entire civilian infrastructure as military assets. Cargo ships, passenger vessels, even private yachts are attacking our fleet, and they're not trying to preserve their own forces. They're actively sacrificing ships to cause maximum damage to ours. Kethavar's compound eyes clicked as he processed this information. In 8 centuries of conquest, the hegemony had never faced an enemy that didn't try to preserve its military assets. Every civilized species understood that ships and trained crews were valuable resources to be conserved, but humans apparently didn't care about conservation. On his main screen, he watched a human cargo vessel loaded with refined plutonium accelerate directly toward one of his destroyers. The ship's crew was broadcasting on all frequencies, and the translation made his blood run cold. Yeehaw. This is Captain Murphy of the freighter Lucky Strike. We're coming in hot and we ain't stopping. Tell my wife I love her and tell the aliens they can kiss my ass. The cargo ship slammed into the destroyer's port side. and the plutonium cargo detonated in a fusion explosion that vaporized both vessels. The human crew had known it was suicide, but they had sounded happy about it. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Sol system. The humans appear to be overloading every power source they have." "To what end?" His answer came in the form of space itself twisting around his flagship. The humans had somehow learned to weaponize gravitational distortions, creating pockets of warped spacetime that could tear apart anything caught within them. The hegemony's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and particle beams, were useless against the fundamental forces of reality being turned into weapons. A heavy cruiser to his starboard simply folded in on itself as space collapsed around it, creating a brief black hole that consumed the ship and everything nearby. "How is this possible?" Kethavar demanded. "They've only had spaceflight for a few decades." Dr. Lisa Chen, 16 years old and the daughter of Captain Sarah Chen, sat in a laboratory beneath Geneva, surrounded by Nobel Prize winners and theoretical physicists who were frantically scribbling equations on whiteboards. The girl who had been working on quantum mechanics for her high school science fair had just suggested something that made hardened military scientists go pale. "If we can't build better weapons," she said, "why don't we just make space itself fight for us?" The idea was insane. The technology required should have been beyond human understanding for centuries. But humanity was fighting for its survival, and survival had a way of accelerating innovation. Using equipment that was never designed for weapons research, Earth scientists had managed to create localized Alcubierre bubbles, not enough for faster-than-light travel, but enough to create regions where the laws of physics went haywire. Above Earth's atmosphere, Captain Chen led what remained of humanity's space fleet in a desperate running battle with the alien armada. Her ship, the UES Defiance, had been built in 72 hours using plans that changed every few minutes as new alien technology was salvaged and reverse-engineered. "Target the big one," she ordered, pointing at Admiral Kethavar's flagship. "All ships concentrate fire." But the human attack wasn't like anything the aliens had seen before. Instead of organized formations and coordinated strikes, the human ships swarmed like angry insects. They ignored tactical doctrine, split up constantly, and seemed to delight in doing the unexpected. A converted luxury yacht, the Playboy's dream, accelerated past Chen's flagship with its hull covered in spray-painted skull and crossbones. Its crew consisted of 3 billionaire playboys who had decided that dying in a blaze of glory was better than living under alien rule. "This is Playboy's dream," came the transmission. "We're going to ram that big ugly ship and see how much damage we can do. If anyone wants to write our obituary, make sure it mentions how awesome this was." The yacht, its fusion engines overloaded to dangerous levels, slammed into the alien flagship's shield generators. The explosion was spectacular, but more importantly, it brought down a section of the ship's defensive barrier. Captain Chen didn't waste the opportunity. "All ships, pour it on. They're vulnerable." But the most devastating attack came from an unexpected source. Commander Betty Rodriguez, a 60-year-old grandmother and retired NASA engineer, had volunteered to pilot a suicide mission using one of humanity's experimental antimatter research vessels. "This is for my grandchildren," she broadcast as her ship, loaded with every scrap of antimatter that Earth's research facilities could produce, accelerated toward the alien flagship. Admiral Kethavar's crew scrambled to intercept the small human vessel, but it was too late. The antimatter explosion tore a massive hole in his flagship's hull, and atmosphere began streaming out into space. "Damage report," Kethavar demanded as emergency lights flashed throughout his bridge. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 18. We've lost main power to the forward sections. And Admiral..." His tactical officer's scales turned an even deeper purple. "The humans are boarding us." It should have been impossible. The human ships were too small to carry significant boarding parties, and their weapons technology was supposedly primitive. But somehow, humans in pressure suits were floating through the hole in his ship's hull, carrying weapons that no civilized species would use in the confined space of a starship. The humans had brought shotguns and flamethrowers onto his ship. In zero gravity, in a pressurized environment where a hull breach could kill everyone, they didn't seem to care. Kethavar watched security footage of human soldiers fighting his elite guards in the ship's corridors. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, But they fought with a ferocity that was terrifying to watch. When they ran out of ammunition, they used their empty guns as clubs. When their weapons broke, they fought with knives and tools. One human soldier, badly wounded and facing 3 hegemony warriors, pulled the pin from a grenade and smiled as he died, taking them with him. What kind of species fights like this? Kethvar whispered. His science officer looked up from his analysis of human psychological profiles. Admiral, according to their own historical records, they fight each other like this regularly. They call it war, and they've been doing it for their entire recorded history. They fight their own species this way. Worse, Admiral. These tactics they're using against us, they invented them to use against each other. The implications were staggering. The hegemony conquered through overwhelming technological superiority and the threat of total destruction. Most species surrendered rather than face annihilation, but humans had been fighting wars of annihilation against each other for thousands of years. They knew how to fight when all hope was lost. They knew how to turn everyday objects into weapons. They knew how to keep fighting even when victory was impossible, and now they were applying thousands of years of hard-won military experience against an alien force that had never faced anything like it. The battle for Kethvar's flagship became a nightmare of close-quarters combat in zero gravity. Human soldiers, many of them volunteers with no formal military training, fought through the ship's corridors using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They used the ship's own atmosphere against its defenders, setting fires that consumed oxygen and forced the aliens to retreat. They sabotaged life support systems and artificial gravity generators. They even used the ship's waste recycling system to deploy improvised chemical weapons. But the most shocking moment came when a human soldier, cornered and facing certain death, looked directly at Kethvar through a security camera and spoke. "Hey, Bug Eyes," the human said, blood running down his face from multiple wounds. "You want to know the difference between you and us? You fight to conquer. We fight to survive. And we're really, really good at surviving." The soldier then detonated an explosive device that had been strapped to his chest, taking out the ship's main computer core and half the bridge crew. Admiral Kethvar, his flagship crippled and his fleet decimated, sent an emergency transmission to Hegemony Command. But the message wasn't a request for tactical advice or additional weapons. It was a warning. "Do not underestimate the humans," he broadcast. "They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not value their own lives. They do not follow military doctrine. They use their entire civilization as a weapon, and they seem to enjoy combat in a way that is disturbing." The transmission was intercepted by human communications networks and broadcast across Earth. But instead of frightening humanity, it had the opposite effect. In cities around the world, people cheered. The invincible aliens who had conquered. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On the water world of Aquinas Prime, the amphibian leaders of the Tidal Republic gathered in their great coral chambers, listening to the impossible reports coming from the distant Sol system. The Zephyrian hegemony, which had ruled over their world for 300 years, was being defeated by a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. "Is this confirmed?" asked Elder Wavecrest, her gill slits fluttering with nervous excitement. "Multiple sources," replied the intelligence coordinator. "The humans have destroyed over half of Admiral Kethvar's invasion fleet. They're using tactics that, well, no one has ever seen anything like them before." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. The hegemony ruled over 47 different species, each conquered through overwhelming force and kept in line through fear. For 8 centuries, rebellion had been unthinkable. The Zephyrians had weapons that could crack planets and fleets that numbered in the millions. But now, tiny Earth had proven that the invincible hegemony could bleed. On the mining world of Pharaoh 7, the underground resistance movement that had been planning a hopeless rebellion for decades suddenly found themselves studying human battle tactics. The rocky-skinned Feroci had been enslaved to mine rare metals for the hegemony, but they had never forgotten their warrior traditions. "Look at this," said Rockbreaker Than, pointing at intercepted footage of human cargo ships ramming alien destroyers. "They're using industrial equipment as weapons, just like we could do with our mining gear." The footage was grainy and corrupted, transmitted across thousands of light years through hegemony communication networks that were never supposed to carry such information. But the message was clear. Resistance was possible. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Kethvar sat in the damaged command center of his flagship, watching his invasion force dissolve around him. In 6 hours of combat, he had lost 60% of his fleet to a species that shouldn't have posed any threat at all. But the tactical losses weren't what worried him most. It was the psychological profile his xenologists had compiled on human behavior. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "we've analyzed thousands of human communications during the battle. The results are disturbing." "Show me." The main screen displayed intercepted radio transmissions from human pilots and soldiers, but instead of the fear and desperation that should have characterized a losing battle, the communications were filled with something else entirely. "Woohoo! Did you see that explosion?" "I got one." "This is amazing. I've always wanted to be in a space battle." "Hey, save some aliens for the rest of us." Kethvar's compound eyes clicked in confusion. "They're enjoying this?" "It appears so, Admiral. Human psychology is unlike anything we've encountered. They seem to treat warfare as a form of entertainment. Many of their cultural products glorify combat and conflict. They actually volunteer for dangerous missions." The science officer brought up more data. "Admiral, in their recorded history, humans have fought over 14,000 major wars against their own species. They've developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. They practice something called total war, where entire populations are considered valid targets." Kethvar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The hegemony conquered through intimidation, using overwhelming force to break an enemy's will to fight. But how could you intimidate a species that treated war like a sport? "There's more, Admiral. We've detected broadcasts from their planet's surface. Their civilians are celebrating the battle. They're treating it like a festival." On Earth, that was exactly what was happening. In Times Square, New York, giant screens showed the space battle in real time while crowds cheered every human victory. In London, pubs stayed open all night as people gathered to watch the fight. Children who should have been in school were instead glued to tablets, watching their parents and neighbors fight aliens in space. The psychological impact on other alien species was immediate and profound. On the crystalline world of Prismatica, the insectoid glassworkers had been planning a rebellion for 50 years. They had weapons hidden in crystal formations across their planet, waiting for the right moment to strike. But they had never dared to act, knowing that the hegemony would respond with planet-cracking weapons. Now, watching tiny human ships tear apart Zephyrian destroyers, they began to reconsider. "If the humans can fight them," chittered Shardsinger Prax, "perhaps we can too." The hegemony's communication networks, designed to coordinate their vast empire, became their weakness. Reports of human victories spread faster than official damage control could contain them. Species that had been enslaved for centuries began whispering in dark corners about rebellion. But the most shocking development came when the humans captured their first intact Zephyrian ship. Captain Chen led the boarding party personally, floating through the alien vessel's corridors with a team of Marines and engineers. The ship's crew had been evacuated, but they had left behind something priceless: their technology. "Dr. Webb, you need to see this," Chen called over her communicator. The scientist appeared on her helmet display, broadcasting from Earth. "What did you find?" "They're computers. They're not encrypted. It's like they never expected anyone to capture one of their ships. Within hours, human computer specialists had broken into the alien databases and downloaded everything: ship designs, weapon schematics, star charts, and most importantly, detailed intelligence about the hegemony's military forces." Dr. Webb's team worked frantically to analyze the data. "Captain, this is incredible." "They have detailed files on every species in their empire, 47 different civilizations, all conquered and enslaved. What about their military strength? That's the surprising part. Their fleets are spread thin across hundreds of systems. Most planets only have a small garrison. They rely on fear and overwhelming response to any rebellion. But if multiple worlds rebelled simultaneously, the implications were staggering. The hegemony wasn't as strong as they appeared. They were like a balloon blown up to impressive size but filled with nothing but hot air. Captain Chen made a decision that would change galactic history. Using the captured alien communication systems, she began broadcasting to every enslaved world in the hegemony's empire. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. We know you're listening. We know you've been enslaved by the Zephyrians. We're here to tell you that they can be beaten. We've destroyed half their fleet with mining equipment and cargo ships. If we can do it, you can do it too. The message included detailed tactical information about Zephyrian weaknesses, weapon vulnerabilities, and most importantly, proof that the invincible empire could be defeated. On Aquinas Prime, Elder Wavecrest listened to the human transmission with growing excitement. They're sharing their tactical knowledge freely. They want us to rebel, but why? Asked a younger council member. What do they gain from helping us? Elder Wavecrest thought about the human battle tactics she had witnessed. The way they had sacrificed their own ships to save each other, the joy in their voices as they fought impossible odds. I don't think they want to gain anything, she said slowly. I think they just hate bullies. The rebellion began 3 days later. Not on one world, but on 7 worlds simultaneously. The Feroci used their mining equipment to destroy hegemony installations. The Aquinas flooded Zephyrian bases with tidal weapons. The crystalline glassworkers used focused light beams to slice through enemy ships. And on each world, the rebels broadcast the same message. Earth showed us the way. The hegemony can be beaten. Admiral Kethvar, trying to coordinate the defense of his crumbling empire from his damaged flagship, watched the reports pour in with growing despair. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleet, they had inspired a galaxy-wide revolution. How many worlds have declared independence? He asked. 12 and counting, Admiral. The rebellions are spreading faster than we can respond. And they're all using human tactics, unconventional warfare, civilian militias, improvised weapons. But the worst news was yet to come. His tactical officer looked up from his scanner display with an expression of pure terror. Admiral, we're detecting new energy signatures from Earth. They're building something. On Earth's moon, construction crews worked around the clock to build humanity's newest and most ambitious project. Using captured alien technology and human engineering principles, they were constructing something that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. A ship that wasn't just a weapon, but a symbol. A vessel designed not just to fight the hegemony, but to carry humanity to the stars. Dr. Webb supervised the construction with growing amazement. The fusion reactors alone are generating more power than our entire global grid. And the weapon systems, what about them? Asked Captain Chen. Captain, with this ship we could take on their entire fleet. But more importantly, we could reach any world in their empire. We could help other species fight for their freedom. Admiral Kethvar intercepted the construction data and felt his world collapse around him. The humans weren't just defending their home system anymore. They were preparing to go on the offensive. He sent one final transmission to Hegemony Command, but it wasn't a request for reinforcements. It was a warning that would shake the foundations of the galactic order. The humans are not like other species. They don't fight to survive. They fight. The hegemony's response fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system to find Admiral Kethvar's invasion force completely annihilated. Where there should have been 47 ships of the line, there was only wreckage and debris fields that told the story of a battle unlike any in galactic history. Supreme Admiral Vorthak, commander of the hegemony's most elite battle group, stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. He had brought 300 ships, enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds, expecting to find scattered human resistance that needed to be crushed. Instead, he found Earth's defenses stronger than ever. The Sol system had been transformed into a fortress. The asteroid belt bristled with weapons platforms built from salvaged alien technology. Earth's moon had been converted into a massive military base, its surface covered with shipyards and weapon foundries. And orbiting the planet itself was something that made Vorthak's blood run cold. "What am I looking at?" he demanded of his science officer. "It appears to be a human dreadnought, Supreme Admiral. But the energy readings? They're off the scale. That single ship is generating more power than our entire fleet." The UES Defiance hung in Earth's orbit like a silver knife pointed at the heart of the galaxy. Built in just 3 weeks using a combination of human engineering and captured hegemony technology, it was larger than any ship in the alien fleet and armed with weapons that shouldn't have been possible. Captain Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, watching the alien armada approach. Around her, the most experienced officers from Earth's military forces prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle. They brought everything: observed Major Rodriguez, studying the tactical display. 300 ships. That's not an invasion force, that's an extermination fleet. Good, Chen replied calmly. That means we'll have plenty of targets. The transformation of human military thinking had been remarkable. 3 weeks ago, facing a single alien dreadnought had seemed impossible. Now looking at an enemy fleet that outnumbered them 10-1, the crew of the Defiance seemed almost eager for the fight. Dr. Webb appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the command center on Luna. Captain, all systems are green. The new weapons are fully charged and ready for testing. What's our tactical situation? Chen asked. The lunar defense grid is online. We have gravitational weapons, kinetic accelerators, and something new. Dimensional disruptors that can fold space around enemy ships. The asteroid platforms are armed and ready, and the Mars Defense Force is standing by with their mobile fleet. Supreme Admiral Vorthak listened to intercepted human communications with growing alarm. These weren't the desperate transmissions of a doomed species. They sounded like they were preparing for a celebration. All ships battle formation, he ordered. We'll show these primitives what happens when they defy the hegemony. But the human response was immediate and devastating. The first wave of attacks came from the lunar surface. Massive railguns, built using captured alien materials and powered by fusion reactors that operated beyond all safety limits, launched projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The tungsten rods, each one the size of a school bus and moving at 30,000 kilometers per second, punched through hegemony shields like they were made of paper. 6 alien destroyers simply ceased to exist, vaporized by kinetic impacts that released more energy than nuclear weapons. Impossible, Vorthak snarled. How can primitives have such weapons? His answer came in the form of a transmission from Earth. Captain Chen's voice, calm and professional, reached every ship in the alien fleet. Supreme Admiral Vorthak, this is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. We've analyzed your fleet composition and weapon capabilities. You have approximately 4 minutes before our next attack wave. We suggest you surrender. The audacity of it stunned the alien commander. A single human ship was demanding the surrender of the hegemony's most powerful fleet. Destroy them, he ordered. All ships, concentrate fire on that dreadnought. 300 alien ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and exotic particle weapons converged on the UES Defiance in a display of firepower that should have reduced any target to subatomic particles. The human ship's shields flared and held. Impossible, Vorthak whispered. What kind of shields are those? Dr. Webb, monitoring the battle from Luna, smiled grimly. Adaptive shields based on their own technology, but improved with human engineering. They're designed to learn from each attack and become stronger. But the Defiance wasn't just defending itself. As the alien weapons fire continued, the massive human ship began to move, accelerating toward the enemy fleet with impossible grace for something its size. All ships, scatter, Vorthak ordered, but it was too late. The Defiance opened fire with weapons that redefined the possibilities of space combat. Gravitational disruptors created pockets of twisted space-time that crushed alien ships like tin cans. Quantum torpedoes phased through enemy shields and exploded inside their hulls. And most terrifying of all, dimensional weapons that folded space around their targets, transporting entire ships into the heart of nearby stars. In 30 minutes of combat, the UES Defiance single-handedly destroyed 50 alien vessels while taking minimal damage itself. But the real shock for Supreme Admiral Vorthak came when he realized the humans weren't trying to win defensively. They were hunting his fleet. Human ships built using captured alien technology but improved with human innovations appeared throughout the solar system like wolves emerging from the forest. They were faster than hegemony vessels, more maneuverable, and armed with weapons that combined alien science with human creativity in ways that should have been impossible. The UES Vengeance, humanity's second dreadnought, emerged from behind Jupiter accompanied by a fleet of smaller vessels. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had learned to treat impossible odds as merely challenging problems to solve. "This is Commander Jackson of the Vengeance," came the transmission. "Any alien ships that want to surrender can do so now. Otherwise, we're going to demonstrate why threatening Earth was a bad idea." The battle became a rout. Human ships swarmed through the alien formation like angry hornets, destroying enemies with a combination of superior technology and tactics that no civilized species would use, Admiral Vorthik watched his command ship's shields fail under concentrated human fire and prepared for death. But instead of destruction, his ship was surrounded by human vessels that used some kind of tractor beam technology to disable his engines. "Attention, Hegemony flagship," came Captain Chen's voice. "Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with force." The boarding action was swift and efficient. Human Marines, equipped with powered armor built from alien materials, cut through the ship's hull and overwhelmed the defenders using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Within an hour, Supreme Admiral Vorthak found himself standing in the Defiance's conference room, facing Captain Chen across a metal table. "You fought well," Chen said simply, "but you picked the wrong species to threaten." "You cannot defeat the entire hegemony," Vorthak replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "We have thousands of ships, weapons that can destroy stars, fleets that span the galaxy." Chen smiled. "We know. We downloaded your entire military database from Admiral Kethavar's ship. Your forces are spread thin across hundreds of systems, maintaining control through fear and overwhelming response. But what happens when that fear disappears?" As if to answer her question, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. The rebellion that had started with 7 worlds had spread to 50 systems. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were rising up using human tactics and captured hegemony weapons. On Aquinas Prime, the Tidal Republic had declared independence and was successfully defending itself against hegemony forces. On Pharaoh 7, the mining slaves had overthrown their overseers and were broadcasting messages of freedom to other enslaved worlds. "It's over," Chen said quietly. "Your empire was built on the idea that resistance was futile. We've proven that wrong. Every species you've enslaved now knows that the hegemony can be beaten. But the final blow to the hegemony's power came when Earth announced its next move. Using captured alien technology and human engineering, they had developed faster-than-light travel that was superior to anything the hegemony possessed. We're not staying in the Sol system," Chen announced in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "We're coming to help every species that wants to be free. The age of galactic empires is over." The announcement was accompanied by footage of Earth's new deep space fleet. Dozens of ships, each one incorporating the best of human and alien technology, preparing to carry the fight to oppressed worlds across the galaxy. Supreme Admiral Vorthak, now a prisoner on the ship that had destroyed his fleet, watched the preparations with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Why?" he asked Chen during one of their conversations. "Why risk your lives for species you've never met?" Chen thought for a moment before answering. "Because we know what it's like to be threatened with extinction. And we know that bullies only understand one language." The human fleet departed Sol System 3 days later, carrying a message of hope to enslaved worlds and